Everyone has a game that they love above all other games, their personal favorite. But to any other content creators and reviewers out there, have you ever tried to review your favorite game of all time with as little bias as possible? It's definitely not an easy task. But thanks to Square Enix and Nintendo, I have a chance to do so. One of the handheld's newest RPGs just happens to be my personal favorite game of all time, and has been for several years. So let's give this a try. Here is my review of Final Fantasy IX for the Nintendo Switch. The story of this game takes place in a fantasy world known as Gaia. The plot surrounds Zidane and his theater crew as they go to a famous castle to perform a play as a front and distraction so they can sneak into the castle and kidnap the princess. After a very rocky escape makes them crash land in a nearby haunted woods, Zidane, the princess, and everyone else involved move towards a neighboring country, not realizing the danger that they and the rest of the world are in. Now overall, FF9 has good storytelling, especially all of the humanity and very relatable themes that they show across this 30-hour adventure. My main nitpick and gripe about the story is the fact that there is a twist later on in the game that comes out of nowhere, had no foreshadowing, and really just doesn't fit in the storyline. Nothing really led up to it, nothing hinted at it, and if it wasn't there, the storyline and ending wouldn't really change. It's one of those scenarios where it pops up and you think, why is this here? When it comes to gameplay, Final Fantasy IX is a turn-based RPG with an overworld map, towns, dungeons, and a ton of side quests and side content for you to do. First things first, what is different about Final Fantasy IX on the Switch and Final Fantasy IX on the Vita, aka the PS1 Classic, aka the original PS1 release? Outside of the upscaled and smooth visuals for the character models, you have a lot of new features. On the title menu, you can rewatch any of the FMV cutscenes and play the secret blackjack game once you've cleared the story. More importantly, there is a cheat system that can make the game a very casual experience or help with some quality of life things that Final Fantasy IX suffered from back in 2000. These range from a difficulty removal with automatically leveling everybody up to 99, turning off random encounters, automatically mastering abilities, and making all attacks do maximum damage, to the more legitimate gamer's cheat known as high speed mode that speeds the game up. This gives you a lot of variety in how you want to play, be it as a new or veteran player. But as I just said, high speed mode is more for legitimate players who don't want to just max everything out. It basically speeds the game up to several times its normal speed, like putting a VHS tape on fast forward. This is very useful for speeding up level grinding sessions, but more importantly, all of the timers for the minigame are unaffected by high speed mode, meaning you can play Chocobo Hot and Cold, move 3 or 4 times your normal speed, but the timer will still go by in real time, letting you do a lot more in a lot less time. It also helps with the long load times for battle and slowdown on the world map. Of course, all of these are optional, so you can play it vanilla if you want. You just have to go into the pause menu or configuration menu to toggle and turn them on. When it comes to progression, it's pretty much your typical RPG formula. You move along a world map, constantly push towards a new location by the story, so it stays pretty linear until later on when you gain access to a ship or airship. But it doesn't feel that linear due to the heavy amount of side content that you have available even from very, very early in the game. You may not have access to a lot of continents right away, but you do have access to a lot of different things that you can do, like playing the card game with NPCs and playing Chocobo Hot and Cold to find treasure and getting early access to equipment. And that brings us to the 3 systems that I feel make Final Fantasy IX very unique, especially compared to the other games of the series. The ability system, the stat system, and the steal system. You don't gain new abilities and skills when you level up in this game. You only gain HP and MP stats. You learn new skills and abilities by equipping weapons and armor that have those abilities, and once you've fought in enough battles, you will master those abilities and retain them even after you upgrade your equipment. This is something I don't see often in RPGs, and the only game I can think of that has a system like this is Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, where you could meld commands with passive abilities, and once the command had mastered, you retain that ability, whether you kept the original command equipped or not. Second is the stat system. As I said earlier, leveling up only gets you HP and MP and doesn't actually increase your attack, speed, defense, or other stats. The only thing that'll increase those is new equipment. So even if you level grind all the way up to level 99 or use that level 99 cheat, you're not going to do any more damage unless you actually get a new weapon. And getting early access to the new equipment, it ties into our third point, which is the steal system. The main character Zidane is a thief, and he has a steal command that can steal items from the enemy. All bosses in Final Fantasy IX have armor and weapons on them that you don't gain access to until much later in the story, depending on the boss. So if you want an easier time on the harder bosses of the game, each boss battle isn't just I need to beat this boss, it's I need to hold out against this boss to steal all of this rare equipment and then take down the boss. Now, as far as the actual combat is concerned, it plays like a typical turn-based RPG. The main unique factor is the fact that each character has their own skills and class that are different from the other characters. That's not really different from today's RPGs, but when Final Fantasy IX first released, fans of the series had just seen Final Fantasies 7 and 8, where pretty much any of the playable characters could use all the different kinds of magic and summons, and then went to 9, which was more retro, at least at the time. Now, the formula comes together pretty well, and in terms of content and length, how long this game is really depends on one thing. Do you use cheats or don't you use cheats? In my recent Switch playthrough, I used the Level Max, Gil Max, and Master Ability cheats and with using those, no level grinding, and using high speed mode to do almost the entire Chocobo Hot and Cold side quest, I cleared the final boss in a little under 30 hours. Now, if you didn't do all of the side quest stuff, you could probably reach the final boss in about 24-25 hours using those cheats. Either way, you're going to get a good amount of content out of this game. We're going to go on controls for just a second because there is one thing that the controls did for this, the PS4 and Steam version, that really is strange. No analog movement. When you move around with the left analog stick, you do 8 directional movement as if you were using a D-pad. And if I'm remembering this correctly, which I might not be, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the original game on the PS1 had true analog movement when you use the left analog stick. Now let's get into presentation, which has its ups and downs. The really big up about presentation is the fact that all of the character models have been severely upscaled and smoothed out, so all of those jaggy and blurry field character models from the PS1 version look super detailed, super smooth, and very, very good. On the downside, all of the pre-rendered backgrounds look very blurry, which is even more apparent because of how good the character models look. The other thing I want to say about the visual presentation is a little bit of a nitpick, and that's the lack of screen options. You've got a 4:3 ratio with borders on the side, and you're stuck with that. There are no full screen or widescreen options here. Now when we get to performance, the long loading sequences for combat from the PS1 version are still here in the Switch version. Whenever you start combat, you're probably going to be waiting a good 7 to 10 seconds before the combat actually loads and actually starts, making the slow combat system of this game feel that much slower. Now let's talk frame rate. The PS1 classic version of Final Fantasy IX on the Vita and PSP had a lot of slowdown in forest battles and some spell animations. Thankfully, that slowdown is not here on the Switch, but in its place, we have a very large amount of slowdown on the world map, whether you're running around on foot or riding an airship. The good thing is you can turn on high speed mode and pretty much completely get rid of both this problem and the load time problem. But it doesn't change the fact that it's there, and it is very, very noticeable. Now let's talk battery life, which was very, very impressive. Final Fantasy IX has a battery range of 4 hours and 51 minutes on high settings, up to 7 hours and 21 minutes on low settings. Now, in conclusion, Final Fantasy IX returns to handhelds with prettier models and more features and options for players. Now, on the downside, the game still suffers from a few things, from the slow combat, technical hiccups, and a certain plot twist towards the end of the game. It is no stretch to say it could have been optimized a lot better, but if you're looking for a portable Final Fantasy game, this will give you plenty of bang for your buck. As much as it pains me to do it for my favorite game, Reviews to Go rates Final Fantasy IX for the Nintendo Switch a 6.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below or head to the website at reviewstogo.com.